Okay, so I guess the pandemic caused well, not guess, I know it caused a massive amount of disruption for companies, particularly with their IT, with everyone working from home, etc. So cloud was already on the horizon, but for a lot of companies, it may well have been their first use of cloud to get over the fact they couldn't maybe access, on-prem resources, or for those that were using cloud, they probably increased their use. Is that correct?
Yeah, I guess it's a bit of a mixture, really. There's, for some organisations, is meant exploring the options for hosting their IT infrastructure in the cloud, either because they've had to downsize their offices, or they've no longer had the space to house their own IT infrastructure on premise, or it could be because they've had to scale up in such a way that it's far more complex to run their own IT infrastructure themselves. But on the other hand, organisations who already host their IT infrastructure in the cloud, they've also had to scale up to meet the increasing demand of their users and also their end clients. Just to give you an example, we've got a customer who's in kind of like the e-learning space. They're called Think Learning, but they had to scale up their resources massively to cope with the additional demand that was brought about by the pandemic, because they had more and more people using and accessing their applications. And this included a training platform for junior doctors, and also a booking service for COVID vaccination appointments. In fact, our platform actually aided the application to handle over 9,000 bookings in just one weekend. So that's the kind of demand and how we've had to supply that infrastructure to meet various organisations' kind of strategies when dealing with certain use cases for adopting cloud technology.
Okay, and the examples you gave there demonstrate the benefits of the cloud. So I'm thinking we're talking sort of resilience, speed of deployment, I guess, is quite important, particularly in the times we've been through. And then you've got the sort of agility, and you've mentioned scale as well. Are those the sort of major benefits that you see your customers accessing for cloud?
Yeah, definitely. I think resilience is certainly a key benefit. But obviously that depends if the environment is architected in the correct manner. However, I'd say more so the pandemic has forced people who don't normally work from home. They're the type of people that now had to force their employees to work from home, which has led to an accelerated digital transformation for many companies. Another area where kind of the cloud adoption has helped it's by creating far better security measures as well. So where managed providers such as Hyve, we can help implement vast range of security protocols and expertise that organisations simply don't have internally to rely on. But then you mentioned things around speed and agility. I'll say that, speed of deployment is a major benefit of cloud computing, but it's only a real driver for cloud adoption if it actually meets their actual deployment strategy. But then the other side of things as well, with the agility and speed, you've got the scalability side of things. And as I mentioned before with one of our clients, they really had to scale up on demand to meet the amount of users accessing their application. And you can only really do that and scale up really quickly when you're hosting in a cloud environment.
And in terms of the sort of the challenges of the cloud, I'm guessing the first one, which probably varies from company to company, is to work out how many of their resources, IT resources, they want to either fire up in the cloud from scratch, or more likely move from an on-premise environment, to a cloud or managed service. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess it's always going to be a challenge for a lot of companies, deciding how much of their infrastructure they should push out to the cloud and how much they should maintain themselves in-house. And this can be really difficult for larger organisations who suffer from the term, I don't know if you've heard, shadow IT, where you've got a lot of departments who don't actually communicate effectively with a central IT department when they're looking to source IT infrastructure. So what this leads to is a lot of confusion and inconsistency with how they procure and also manage their IT systems. But then also when customers approach us with this kind of problem, we always offer an initial consultation where we fully understand what their IT landscape looks like, and then we're able to make bespoke recommendations based on their competencies as to which workflows they should push out to the cloud and which ones they should retain on premise.
And in terms of other things to consider, I guess the difference, or working out whether they want an unmanaged or a managed cloud. So perhaps can you define unmanaged first and the pluses and minuses of an unmanaged approach?
Yeah, sure. So I'd say an unmanaged cloud is generally an approach where you use a public cloud, such as AWS or Azure, or if you use bare metal servers with a hosting provider. And what they're doing is simply providing you with the IT infrastructure with no support or service SLAs around it.
Okay, so on the managed, I guess the obvious conclusion is that there will be some SLAs and service around it, but what are the full benefits of managed as opposed to just that basic unmanaged approach?
Okay, so I'd say with an unmanaged approach, we go down some of the pros and cons side of things. With an unmanaged side of things, you get to run your application or your website where there are no restrictions in terms of what you do with the infrastructure. So it gives customers a little bit more freedom with that approach. It can also be a little bit more cost effective when you look at it as a pay-as-you-go model. But then when you do need that kind of additional support, you're often paying around 25, sometimes 50% off your overall bill, which can be quite expensive. But then on the downside of things as well, if anything was to go wrong with an unmanaged server, like the server goes down, there is no support, and effectively you're on your own to get everything back up and running. You can't rely on anyone. There's no SLAs that you can fall back on, or you don't really have any guarantees. And then, if you've got an unmanaged environment, you also have to think about hiring people and having the right skill set in-house to be able to manage that environment on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so that's sort of the unmanaged landscape. So in terms of the managed, I mean, I don't know if there are any drawbacks, but what are the sort of added advantages of going the managed approach as opposed to unmanaged?
Yeah, sure. So with a managed environment, you've got a fully managed server or platform that's managed right from like the data center, all of the networking side of things, right up to the operating system. And some providers actually go even further into the application layer. But you often find with a managed cloud, you have 24/7, 365 support, as well as SLAs around uptime performance as well. And sometimes you can rely on that managed provider to be an extension of your IT department. But some of the benefits are, having the environment fully managed 24/7 can give a lot of organizations that peace of mind that their IT infrastructure is hosted in a safe environment and their mission critical data is in safe hands at all times. You're also able to reach out to the provider if they're providing you with the managed service. And you kind of have access to qualified engineers any time of the day, day or night, and you can lean on them for advice and guidance if any issues kind of arise. I guess when you opt for a managed cloud, generally also the provider will have all of the security accreditations and tick boxes in place. So a lot of organizations, especially when you're looking like public sector, they're looking for certain accreditations such as the ISOs and Cyber Essentials. So as an organization, you don't really have to worry about sourcing them yourself because the IT provider or the cloud provider is taking care of that for you. But the one drawback I'd say from a managed cloud is that it can be seen as a more expensive option because you're paying for that extra layer of support. However, if you kind of compare that to having a team of experts in-house, running and maintaining your IT infrastructure, it can actually be more a cost-effective option.
Okay, so in terms of maybe sort of the concluding sort of thoughts for people. We've discussed, I guess, a little bit about on-prem versus cloud, and then unmanaged versus managed. So if people are sort of going through this process or somewhere in that journey, what are the sort of key things they need to, you know, if they're evaluating an offering, particularly in the cloud, or as I say, you know, asking someone, should I keep on-prem or go to the cloud? What sort of things do they need to consider, or the questions they need to be asking people in that process?
I'd say when evaluating which or what approach to take, it's really a case of understanding themselves, how much IT infrastructure that organization is capable of running and maintaining themselves, when, you know, taking into account and considering all the other factors, such as all the additional costs that's associated with it, you know, from, you know, the power, the cooling, security, network costs, as well as having all the right expertise and skill set in-house to manage the environment on a day-to-day basis. It's also worth considering and knowing, you know, what IT workflows can effectively run in a cloud environment, which is also, or which we normally discuss with our clients during an in-depth consultation. I guess with the unmanaged and managed cloud, when considering that approach, it's again understanding and being aware of the skill set that you currently have and the gaps that you need to fill to ensure that your applications are running at optimal performance. You know, covering everything from the day-to-day running of the operations to the ongoing maintenance and all the management that's required on a day-to-day.
Okay, that's great. Well, it's been good to chat, Nev, so thanks very much indeed for your time. Thanks.
Sure, thank you.